We start our afternoon session with online shopping. Obviously, there is nothing that you can't get at a click of a mouse, including superfoods and food supplements. But that raises a question, and that is how to protect consumers on the internet. Is there a way to do it, and if so, how? And how is the official control possible on the internet? Georg Schreiber heads the Food Safety Division at the German Federal Office of Consumer Production and Food Safety, and he is here today to answer some of those questions. Thank you so much for that, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues here in the room and connected online, I will inform you in the next minutes about Gezielt, which is a German central unit for e-commerce control. And this unit, they have the task to control everything which is under the German Food Act, which is of course food, but also feed, cosmetics, certain consumer products, in particular food contact materials, but also materials which are touching your skin. So, for example, my jacket would fall under this law, and tobacco. So they have a broad range of products which they are controlling. I will start with some numbers. Here you see information from the German Trade Association, HDE, online. And in yellow or in orange, you can see the online sales, the annual, was es durchschnittlich?
Average?
The average increase per year. So you see in the down right corner, you see food, and on the right side, you see the years 2019 and 2020. So 2019 was before Corona, 2020 was the first Corona year. You see an increase on food sales, and online food sales of 60%. I think this is quite impressive. I stay with numbers, but go now to the European Union Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed. And I concentrate now on food supplements. So on average, in the years 2019 to 2021, so for 3 years, we had around 70% of all the RAS notifications in the EU were related to food supplements. What I have to say here is that the numbers which I give to you is not an overview, a general overview of the market, but of the results of the control. So, for example, if some member states have a certain priority, of course you will find a lot of notification in this area. So the numbers which I give you is not a general overview of the market. Yes. So. Notifications for food supplements were primarily reported from Germany with 70%, Sweden 16%, and UK with 13%. And the food supplements subject to these notifications came mainly to the European Union from the United States, from the United Kingdom, and from China, and within the European Union from Germany and the Netherlands. Okay, the most prominent hazards, 60%, more than 60%, are due to unauthorized novel food ingredients and unauthorized substances. So I just name some, you can read: cannabidiol, tetrahydrocannabidiol, yohimbe, 2-chloroethanol, ethylene oxide. Of course, this was very prominent last year, I think, in all member states. And then our classic substances, sildenafil and tadalafil. Okay. And on the right side of this sheet, you find in the second row from above, you find also D and P. This is due to a program in UK where they focused on the substance in food supplements, and of course they found a high number, and therefore you have D and B at the second most hazard substance. Okay, and this relates to what I said. This is not a general overview of the market. It depends from the priorities of the control programs of the EU member states. Or in this case from UK, not EU member state. Okay, so these were numbers for the whole EU. Now I concentrate on Germany. So 20% of the notifications of the EU system concerns Germany as a recipient mostly of these products. And out of this 20%, 70% of these notifications were submitted by German authorities to the RAS system. And again, the most frequent hazards are these substances which are listed on the right side of the sheet, and this is more or less identical to the most prominent hazards in the whole EU. And there's something wrong with the slide, but the most frequent countries of origin means either it is produced in this country or it has been first put on the market, is Germany with 21%, India, and there are some other countries which I cannot read and I don't remember, sorry. Okay, these were the numbers from the RAS system focused on food supplements. Now I will explain you the work of our Internet Control Unit. We have one unit in Germany which is responsible of the products which I named on the title slide, and they are financed by our 16 federal states. And in Germany, these 16 federal states are responsible for the implementation, for the enforcement of the food law, and these 16 federal states are further divided in 400 districts, and each district has a competent authority. So, in fact, this one unit is working for 400 competent authorities in Germany. We decided to centralize this search because it avoids double work. It doesn't make sense that all these 16 Länder or the 400 districts have their own unit, because on the internet all would find the same. So it's very reasonable to concentrate this work in one unit. And in my personal opinion, it goes further. I would say it makes sense to have one European Union centralized e-commerce search unit. But for the moment, the Commission is not open for my suggestion, surprisingly. So, okay, this central unit, they are working six persons in this unit. Even before the COVID crisis, we analyzed and came to the conclusion that we need at least 12 people to cover all the work here in Germany on the internet searches. We now agreed that this year they get 3 additional persons and next year 3 additional persons. So they have these 12 people. But as I showed you before, the e-commerce during COVID, as everybody knows, increased dramatically. So I fear that even these 12 people will not be enough to do really effective work on the control of the internet products. Okay, what they are doing, they are searching for products. So, for example, if there is a RAS notification of a certain product dangerous for health on the market, these people search the internet and check whether this product is also sold online. Yeah? Then they do online sampling. That means they buy products, and we have the legal basis, I will show you after, that this product can then be used as official sample. Yeah? Then they inform the consumers, and they have a lot of cooperation with many, many stakeholders. There's something wrong with my slides, so okay, but anyway. So on searches, so as I said, they have a rational identification of a certain product, they start search, and they are searching only websites in German language, and when it's possible, to order as a German consumer from this website. Meaning that this product, when you order that, this product is also transported to Germany. So German language, and it must be transported to Germany. We have in the European Union, with all the other member states, we have the agreement that every member state searches its own language. So we cover quite a lot. So they do the search, they find products not only in Germany, but also in other member states and also in third countries. So in this case, they inform, of course, the competent authorities in Germany. If there is a product, if there is a trader in Munich, they will inform the competent authority in Munich with the address of the trader and so on. And the same they do with other member states. So if it's in another member state, the trader, then they inform the contact point, the one contact point in this member state, and this contact point will then inform the competent authorities in this member state. And we will inform also the third countries, but this doesn't work very well, so we very often don't get a response. This is different to the European Union. In the European Union, the competent authorities are working very close together, and they take, of course, measures if they found such a product on the market, and the trader is situated in their own member state. The unit does also so-called coordinated control programs. So they agree with the lender, with the federal states on certain programs, and then they do not a specific search for a certain product where they know that this is on the market and this is dangerous for health, but they do a general product. So for example, one program was to find all the traders which sell fresh meat in Germany, or also all shops which, also tattoo shops, or they try to find also traders which are selling CBD containing feed for pets, or they do on cosmetic certain programs. So very different distributor over all the products they are responsible for. So so far they were founded actually in 2013, and since 2014 we run such programs. They run until now 35 programs. They found 5,500 traders, vendors, and many of them were not known to the competent authorities. And they did a lot of online sampling, which means they buy the products and then it can be used as official sample and can be analyzed in the laboratories like the normal food which the food inspector takes from the supermarket or from the food establishments. And during COVID, when COVID started, we found that many food supplements were offered in the internet with claims that they can prevent COVID infection or even heal COVID infections. And so we informed the European Commission and also the other member states about our findings. And very, very fast in this case, the European Commission set up a coordinated EU program, COVID, and in total, all the member states together, they found 627 websites where such food supplements effective against COVID were detected. In Germany, we had 61. And of course, when they found such a website, they try to find the traitor. I mean, normally the traitor should give the address. This is not always the case. So they try to find the traitor, and then the competent authority, which is responsible for this traitor, would visit this traitor and take measures against them. And if the product is offered on marketplaces like eBay, Amazon, and so on, we inform these marketplaces and ask them to remove the products. So just some examples here, a product, I cannot read even, but it was advertised with things like that. This product can be used against or for the prophylaxis of the following 12 diseases, and then you get a lot of diseases, and you find also increase of cellular immune system and blah, 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 yeah, against prevention of heart attacks and so on. And there are many, many examples on the internet. This product here, it says it's widely used as a powerful preventive agent, as well as for oncological diseases, blah, 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 stimulates the growth of lymphocytes and so on. You probably know that. And very striking are normally the prices of these products, which is quite high, so the consumer is not only misled by the information, but also they take quite a lot of money from the consumers, but some consumers believe, and of course it's their responsibility by the end of the day. So, okay, another example here, named from eBay, emergency food crisis, food, flu, corona, organic raw food supplement new. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but corona and normally these traders know what they are doing. And he also says it's a powder is priceless. I'm not allowed to write anything about the effect. So everything is in organic raw food quality. If you have a health problems, take more. So very easy to use. And 99 for only 99 euros. So if you want, after I sell this. Outside of the room. Okay, here again, here is another coordinated control program on cereal grass. Cereal grass is also very, very much advertised with health effects. You can read, say, influence, cholesterol level, weight loss, and so on. And you heard yesterday and today this is not allowed, of course. And then we try to find these traders and take these offers from the market, so to say. So the most important thing is to remove the offer from the internet, and then after the competent authority takes the measures against these traders. Here, I'm very sorry that my slides are so hard to read, but this is a control program on Manuka honey. This is a honey, very high price honey from New Zealand. One glass costs 50 to 150, 200 euros. So very, and of course this is then also named as a superfood and claimed to be antibacterial, antiseptic, and so on. And here, not only is this kind of misleading information is given, but we have also a lot of fraud. So Manuka honey, I mean, as I said, it has a high price, so we also find different honeys labeled Manuka honey and sold for high prices. So we have not only the misinformation for this product, but we have also clearly food fraud in this case. Okay, so far these coordinated programs, so as I said before, they target specific products, they do coordinated control programs, but they look also for the e-food business operators, for the e-entrepreneurs. because in the European Union, every food business operator has to be registered with its competent authority. And this is, especially in the internet, not always the case. In this case, for this task, to find these traders, we are cooperating with our German central tax office, which runs a web crawler to find all businesses, online businesses, and to check whether they pay the tax. But we have the legal base to extract from this database of all traders. We can extract the food business operator, and then we can check whether the food business operator is registered with its competent authority. And our findings are for many, many years that 40% of the vendors, of the traders which sell only online, so they don't have stationary shops, only online, 40% of them are not registered. Okay, I have to hurry a little bit. Online sampling, they do also online sampling, which is not easy because they don't want to be identified as an authority. So you need a faked email address, a faked credit card, a faked delivery address, which is not easy. They do consumer information, how to buy food in a safe way on the internet. They have also a web shop on our website, and they inform the traders about the requirements, about the obligations these traders have. They have a lot of stakeholders. I don't go into this subject because I want to, on the international level or on the EU level, the European Commission is also doing some work since 2016 on e-commerce control. They checked the e-commerce control of the member states. They did some fact-finding missions in the different member states, and there's a report available, and now they are planning audits in order to check the e-commerce control system of the different member states. And also Codex started discussions on e-food standards and, for example, on the food information online. So the achievements which we reached is, first, we can search for all the food business operators and check whether they are registered. We also can now have a legal basis to transmit the information to the marketplaces if on the marketplace there is a product which is not compliant with European or national legislation. And they have then to act, because we have since 2000, we have an e-commerce directive which more or less says if such a marketplace is informed about a non-compliant product and the marketplace is not acting, then the marketplace becomes responsible for this product. So it's a so-called secondary liability clause. And of course, no marketplace will be responsible for dangerous products, so they remove it. So this is a quite achievement. We have also in the European Union the requirement that all the information which is normally mandatory on a food package must be on the website before the purchase is made, of course, except the minimal durability date. So, but all the other information has to be on the website. We have also the legal base in the European Union to close websites, although there is some further national legislation needed to do that. We can anonymously sample online, which I said already, and now I go to the challenges. As I said, we have the e-commerce directive since 2000, so it's 22 years old, this directive. Some is still quite good working, like the secondary liability clause, but now in the European Union we are discussing the so-called Digital Service Act, which should give much more responsibility to the marketplaces. Yeah, they should much more check what is on their marketplace, what is offered, which kind of information, and so on. And this secondary liability clause will also be in this Digital Service Act, but we would like also to have legal basis that all the internet service providers have to cooperate with the competent authorities in cases there are non-compliant, there are dangerous products on the market. We have that for the marketplaces, I told you, with the secondary liability clause, but we don't have a legal obligation to make payment service providers cooperating. So if you have a trader which is hiding and he is very clever, then it's very difficult to find him. But the payment service providers have, of course, the address of this trader, and our request is that the payment service provider has to give, in such cases, this information to the competent authority. This is not included in the Digital Service Act, which is so we have to find another solution. Also, the logistic companies, when we order products, we need to change always the address, otherwise we are identified as control authorities. So we need the cooperation of these logistic companies, which is also not in this Digital Service Act. And we need a legal base to anonymously search the internet. So we can buy products, but we don't have a legal basis really to anonymously search for the internet, for example, in the social media and so on. So we do it, but this is not really correct. So, okay, I think this is the end of my talk. I'm a little bit nearly over time. So
no,
sorry.
You're fine. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Georg Schreiber.